Does that work? Test. Oh, yeah. There we go. All right, I think we got it. Although we have another weird issue. So hold on. Hold. Let's try this again. Hold. All right, here we go. Now I got it. Okay. So welcome to the show. Obviously, a bit of a rough start here today. So, but we got it taken care of. This is what happens when I leave for 2 days and end up going to a different city. So I'm going to tell you about what's going on, actually, what happened on my trip, because it was really interesting and really fun. So you guys know I went to Detroit for at least one night, the first night of the debates, and so again, a lot of interesting things had happened. I met a lot of great people. Took part in a march, so that was a lot of fun, and then also went to a debate watch party in which we did not watch the debate. So, but yeah, the first debate was good. What I saw of it, Sanders and Warren teaming up together, obviously to take on John Delaney, Hickenlooper, et cetera. We're going to talk about things, related to that, of course. The second debate, not awesome. Actually, kind of terrible, but we'll still talk about something related to that as well. But nonetheless, when I was in Detroit, and I'm still kind of recovering, so for a lot of you guys you don't know, I'm a bit of an introvert. So even though I love, being around people and meeting with, especially you guys, those of you that, I saw in Detroit, had a lot of people actually asking to take pictures, which was super cool. I was more than happy to be able to do that for you guys. I signed a couple of T-shirts. That was also awesome. And I was super glad that I was able to do that, that I saw as many of you in Detroit as I did. I mean, it was altogether just an amazing time. But as an introvert, it kind of drains you. And so, I'm still, at, I'm at half, right? I'm at, 50%. But I'm going to try to do a great show for you guys today. But again, I did really enjoy the trip. Fun fact, the hotel that I stayed at, my wife and I actually brought her because it was her birthday. We stayed at the Siren, and it was where all the journalists were staying. I'm not kidding. You had people talking about campaign strategy. You had people talking about, just all sorts of different things. Obviously, right after the first debate, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of talk among the people who were staying there. There are some people that were in the audience. There were some people that were that actually covering it inside the spin room. So one of the interesting conversations that I had was with somebody, ironically in an elevator. And we were having this conversation, and he was inside the room. It's an older gentleman. And he's like, Bernie and Warren ran the room. He's like, if you were in there, there was a lot of passion for those progressive ideas. And he's like, if you were in the room, all you would hear about, all you would, see is just the energy and the passion for Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. He's like, so obviously they ran the debate room. So that was awesome, seeing all that, progressive passion. And that is one thing that I noticed about Detroit. It was super passionate. It is a progressive city. It's sort of unlike anywhere that I've been, because I'm a small town boy, right? So those of you might not be familiar, I live in a small town. I've always lived in small towns. I've never lived in the city. So that's kind of where I get my small town perspective, right? So I'm in the city, and I'm not used to being able to, like, openly wear, progressive T-shirts and slogans and things like that. No, I saw it everywhere. I saw it everywhere, and it was amazing. Even at the gas station, there was somebody who was driving one of the news crew vans, and he was having a conversation with another gentleman out getting gas. And he's like, "Oh, what'd you think of the debates last night?" And I swear to God, this is what he said. And this was again, the conversation between an African American gentleman and a white gentleman that drove a news van. I think it was like a local NBC station. And this guy was like, "I cannot believe Biden is the best that we can come up with. That's crazy." And so I started asking questions, as I normally do, of random strangers while we're getting gas. And I was like, all right, well, what do you think? What kind of issues do you think these candidates should be talking about? Because another thing that he had mentioned is like, hey, we should stop, like, attacking each other, right? And it's sort of that mindset of, like, we shouldn't, like, destroy each other because we need to go after Trump. And I said, well, so there are certain issues that we need to talk about, and there are differences in those issues, and what should we focus on, right? Because, like, for me, I explained that healthcare is a big issue that these candidates have some big differences on. For example, Kamala Harris wants so-called Medicare for all, but also wants to save the private insurance industry, which of course isn't Medicare for all at all. It's not a single-payer system. It would be, a multiple-payer system, which would not solve the problems. So you kind of explain that and, like, explain that there are big differences. For example, Joe Biden, all he wants to talk about is let's add a public option onto onto Obamacare. So talk about it. And so I asked this guy, so what kind of issues? And he's like, really, it at this point, it doesn't matter because none of these things are going to happen. Like, nothing will change in Washington because of the politicians. And so, is it going to get through the Republicans? Well, I mean, you would have to elect, obviously, a progressive Congress, right? And that's more of like what Bernie Sanders addresses and what none of these other politicians, by the way, talk about. They have big plans, but then how are they going to get through the Republicans? How are they going to get through Mitch McConnell? And so that's the big issue there. And so this guy's like, look, nothing's going to happen unless we actually do anything. So why are we, really focusing on that and not actually how to get these things passed? So I totally understand that perspective. So now there's other things, of course, more fun stuff about the hotel. I actually ended up sharing, booking and staying at the same hotel as Cenk Uygur and John Iadarola. So what's funny is that I did not run into Cenk whatsoever. On Wednesday morning, I run into John getting coffee. So that's fun, right? And so look, John, if you've ever met him in person, he's actually one of the nicest guys that you could ever meet, right? Super friendly, super nice, always open to take a picture with somebody. Again, I walked with him during the march on Tuesday afternoon. So, we had a conversation. I ran into Cenk for about 2 seconds. As normal. I mean, because, again, you're lucky to run into Cenk for that long and to have a conversation because the guy's always so busy. But it was good to run into him. It was good to talk to John. That was fun. I talked to a French journalist about, healthcare in America and, asked him about his perspective. And the one thing that he said is, look, is that if America does try, healthcare, like Medicare for all, for example, he's like, as soon as they have that program, they're not going to want to switch back. The problem is that we are so slow here in America to change. And so we here are so afraid of change. And it doesn't help that there are corporate interests, and there are, of course, the media as well, corporate media, and these politicians that end up taking money from healthcare industry and pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, that are putting out these falsehoods. And this French journalist explained that he's like, look, in France we have many other things. We've got 20 of your American dollars. That's basically our copay, and that's it, right? We go for many different things. We might pay $20 to go and see a doctor, but we have paid leave. We have a lot of vacation time. We have all the stuff that you guys don't have because you haven't fought for it, right? And that it's stuff that you can have, and once you do have it, you're not going to want to give it away. So that's, basically it's almost like what's going on with the ACA right now. With the ACA now is actually fairly more popular than it started. So there's a lot of people, and this is what the establishment, by the way, is trying to exploit now, right? So people have the ACA, and now they're putting out the fear of, if we go to Medicare for all, well then you're going to lose your insurance under the Affordable Care Act. You're going to tear it down, and that scares a lot of people because now they've gotten used to it, and now even though it's kind of crumbs from the table, they don't want to let it go because it's better than what they had. And so that's kind of what I took away from that conversation. And so, that was, again, very, very telling. And a kind of a big difference here between, the French. Look, there's another big difference between us and the French as well. French people have no problem protesting if they they utter a word about taking something away from them. And so, that's, if we did that here in America, for one, they would probably end up bringing the police down on us. Just look at what happened in the Occupy protests. Look at what happened at Standing Rock. Look at what happened in any place. You have a gigantic police presence. As soon as us, peasants try to do any sort of protest. And so there's that. But, okay. I'm seeing a lot of, questions and stuff. Let's see. Morlingal Amathar says, you spoke to Jank. John, when are you going to be on TYT main show? If I ever am able to get my ass out to LA more than once, which I haven't been, by the way, at all, there is a chance that I could be on the main show. Again, Jank knows who I am. When I saw him, what he said, he's like, all right, TYT Nation's here. Time to get started. Now we can get started. Or something. So that's what he said. Let's see. I don't know, though. I would, again, if I could raise money, patreon.com/TYT Nation, that will help me be able to afford a trip to LA. Because it is very expensive. In fact, even going to Detroit and staying overnight, I would have loved to have stayed for both days, but that was more expensive than I can handle, right? So it's not cheap traveling, and I want to do it a lot more, to go out to places like New York and LA and do these different shows. Patreon.com/TYT Nation. That's all I'm saying about that. Okay. More questions, because I love doing this, right? Let's see. Did you tell the guy at the gas station Bernie's plan? I did not, and I should have. But I was really... And what I wanted to do is I wanted to listen to these different perspectives first to try to get an idea of where people are, right? And so that's what I generally try to do. Let's see. Any help we get should be a right and shouldn't be punished if they try to take it with you. Or, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so let's get into so let's go to the stories because we're already like 20 minutes in and I haven't done anything. So let's do that. One more thing though, again to the people that I saw there, you guys were absolutely amazing. The after party was super super fun, the debate watch party super super fun. It was great to see those of you there that I saw there, and to the one person that I signed with pen, her shirt, I will bring a marker next time I'm out there because I do plan on being out there. Oh, one more thing. There's no huge video highlights. I took some video of the march with my phone. I could upload that if you guys want. But it's basically just to show how big the the march crowd is because it was really good. Okay. So now let's let's go to the stories. Okay. During Tuesday's night, During Tuesday night's Democratic presidential debate, Bernie Sanders called out CNN, on CNN, by the way, for airing ads from pharmaceutical and insurance industries during their commercial breaks. So now this is not something that generally you think about. You watch the debate. Oh, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to go to the sponsors, whatever. But when you think about it, it's kind of messed up that they're taking commercials from sponsors. So now, here's what Sanders said after he accused moderator Jake Tapper of using Republican talking points against Medicare for All, of which, of course, the night was full of. He said, quote, "By the way, the healthcare industry will be advertising tonight in this program. They will be advertising tonight with that talking point." And of course, it's a talking point about, oh, well, middle class, they're going to see their taxes go up under your Medicare for All plan. So I'll address that. I'll break that down. But first, let's go to the other talking points that we've heard all throughout the night from opponents of Medicare for All. You had John Hickenlooper, Delaney, you had Tim Ryan. So you had all of those people who are against the single-payer system who may or may not have taken a lot of money in legalized bribes from the healthcare industry. Now, so let's go to the cost, right? So I've talked about this before, but again, they continue to use this talking point that it's going to cost over $30 trillion in the next 10 years. $30 trillion to switch to a Medicare for All system. Do you realize it's actually a lot close to what our system actually costs right now? And by the way, it's expected to go up to about $50 trillion over the next 10 years. So very slowly, and in for example 2030 or 2032, it will be around somewhere around $50 trillion. That's not Medicare for All. That's our current system. So now they did studies on this, right? And they found that Medicare for All, at the most conservative study, would save $2 trillion over our current system over the next 10 years. And that's not counting that gigantic amount of growth that is supposed to happen over the next 10 years or any sort of changes to our healthcare system. So that's a lot of savings. And again, that context is always missing from people like John Delaney, Hickenlooper, Tapper even. So you can tell a lot of the questions from these CNN moderators are obviously from right-wing talking points. So Bernie Sanders is correct in calling out those talking points. Now, I would show you video by the way, of Bernie Sanders talking about that, but there have been a lot of issues with YouTubers having these video clips taken down for copyright issues. And so that's one of the other problems, of course, with trying to or having a debate on corporate television. So anyway, let's move on to the next talking point, right? is that 180 million people are going to lose their health insurance, right, under a Medicare for All system. Well, that's not true. We've talked about that as well. Yes, private insurance will no longer be able to cover what Medicare for All covers. So private insurance will go away. So, oh my God, in essence, you will be losing your private insurance, but wait a minute, your insurance will be replaced by something that is far superior. It's literally the Cadillac plan. That's what you're getting, only with no copays, premiums, or deductibles. So you're not losing your health insurance, and I think a lot of people think they're going to lose their doctor instead, but that's not true either. In fact, you will keep your same doctor, and you will no longer have the surprise billing from if your doctor is in your network or out of network, because people have had those costs as well. So not only that, but of course there's that phase-in period of about 4 years in which they will gradually expand it to every single man, woman, and child in this country. And that will, again, take place over 4 years, and then the role of private insurance will continue to shrink. Now, what Tapper was talking about is that it's also being framed as a tax increase for the middle class. Now, will there be a small tax on the middle class to help pay for it? Yes. But in exchange for that, that will save families hundreds of dollars in premiums, copays, and deductibles every month, sometimes thousands of dollars. So those savings will offset a small tax increase. Now, in reality, this will cost hospitals, insurance companies, and pharmaceutical companies billions of dollars in profit. And why do I say hospitals? Well, it's because who are the hospitals charging? The hospitals will charge your insurance company, and your insurance company will pass down the cost to you. So now, was Sanders right to call out CNN for airing anti-single payer ads? So that was the allegation, right? So now, sure enough, you had during a debate's commercial break ads by a pharmaceutical company and industry-backed organizations. So now one of them, and I'll go to this in a minute, but first, Variety reported last week that CNN, which is owned by ATN, required a commitment of $300,000 in advertising on the network before a potential sponsor can purchase commercials within the two debate telecasts. So that's important context. So they have to spend a great amount of money, a very large amount of money on advertising so that they can then have the opportunity to advertise during the debate. Now that goes into the CNN executives' pockets. So that's really, really important. So now one of the ads that ended up making it during the debate was a pill named Otezla. Now, Otezla partially clears skin at the cost of nausea, diarrhea, and depression at a list price of $3,400 for a 30-day supply. That's just one of the commercials. And the American Prospect's David Dayen also noted that in addition to ads from the pharmaceutical lobby, the debate's breaks also featured commercials from the anti-single-payer group Partnership for America's Healthcare Future. Now, that is funded by hospitals and drug companies, and an Alzheimer's disease patient advocacy group that takes major funding from drug companies. The unfiltered, and this is David Dayen writing, 90 seconds of 3 of these commercials in succession comprised more screen time than anything in the debate about money and politics, which is, of course, driving this. The country cannot afford to have CNN creating the proscenium through which America gets informed. And there is a tweet here by the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future to show you where they stand on single payer. Quote, the politicians may call it Medicare for all, Medicare buy-in, or the public option, but all it means is the same thing. Higher taxes for worse care. That is who is advertising on CNN during a debate of which they talk about healthcare. Is it any wonder why CNN's Jake Tapper is using Republican talking points in order to trash Medicare for all? Now, Warren Gunnels, and this is Sanders' staff director, he tweeted this out as well. Quote, CNN just aired this ridiculous TV ad paid for by the big health insurance and drug companies that make massive profits by denying Americans care. If Medicare for All was on trial, the entire corporate media would have to recuse itself for a huge conflict of interest. And Gunnels, of course, is absolutely correct. Corporate media has a conflict of interest because of the ads. As I just told you, you have to spend at least $300,000 in order to have a chance of purchasing airtime in order to put your ad on during the debate. And also because they themselves are multinational corporations. Under Bernie Sanders, they would end up having to pay more taxes, and they, of course, hate it. Now, the other thing that bothers me, that almost no one talks about, by the way, and I want to give a big shout out to Humanist Report for kind of pointing us and making me think about this by saying something similar. These debates not only have commercials, right? So they're monetizing these political debates, but they're also nearly inaccessible to people who do not have, for example, cable television, right? Or the internet. Now, how are Americans in the middle of the country, for example, supposed to be informed when they can't even watch these debates? Why are they not on public television for everyone to see without ads or sponsors? I mean, isn't it crazy that you have a debate that is sponsored by corporations? Complete and utter insanity. And to corporate media, this is like the Super Bowl. This is like some sort of sporting event where they can make money off of. And so this is just one consequence of having corporate control over a political process. And it only serves to enrich the corporations and, as you can see, push pro-corporate talking points. It's gross. We need debates that are on public television, not funded by ads, not controlled by these private companies or these private organizations that can make the rules whether or not you can go. And here's the other thing that they do. They tell you, the DNC specifically tells people, well, you can't go to other debates. If you do, you disqualify yourself from this debate. It is a complete rigged system that they are using in order to push these pro-corporate talking points and make these large corporations tons and tons of money. And on the side, they're crushing independent news outlets and making sure that only the wealthy and connected are able to listen to these debates. And it's just absolutely gross. We need to change the system, get the money out of politics, and actually be able to inform the American people. Okay. All right. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough just could not understand why Democrats went after Barack Obama's so-called legacy of healthcare instead of focusing on President Donald Trump. So now here's what the former Republican host of Morning Joe said, quote, "I'm wondering why people who want votes from Democrats spent all last night trashing Barack Obama, saying support of Obama's signature plan, the Affordable Care Act, the greatest step forward toward universal health care in the history of the American Republic. I'm wondering why they are trashing that, and the defense of that is Republican talking points. It is insanity, my friends." All right, so the reason I didn't show you the video, of course, is because there is issues with copyright. So NBC Universal is well known for that. The last few times I've tried to show a Morning Joe clip, I was hit with copyright. Not a copyright strike, but demonetized. And although, of course, advertising revenue went to NBC Universal. So we're not doing that this time. So you'll just have to settle with me reading the quotes. So let's get to the context and to the substance of this, right? So Joe Scarborough says, how dare you attack the ACA? Okay, for one, the first debate, talked a lot about Medicare for all. Where Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were basically defending Medicare for all against these basically Republican right-wing talking points. Oh, that it will cost more in taxes, that 180 million people will lose their insurance, and that it'll cost over $30 trillion extra a year than what we already pay. All of those are complete ridiculous lies, except for, a slight tax increase, but it is offset, and there's no context when they actually, when they actually say that, when they actually talk about how much taxes are going to go up or whatever, and how they're, going to finance Medicare for all. They don't talk about how much you're actually going to save with the elimination of premiums, deductibles, and copays. The average American family is going to save hundreds of dollars a month just on that. So they don't talk about that, right? So all those are Republican talking points. What's insanity here is defending a Heritage Foundation healthcare plan that keeps private insurance, that gives private insurance not just a big role, but the main role, the prominent role here, where all you have to choose from is different private insurance companies. That's complete insanity. No public option. By the way, public option should have been here about 10 years ago, but it wasn't. So what step forward was it? Now, I'm actually going to answer that, right? So there's a small step in progressive taxation, right? Basically, they hiked taxes on the rich to help pay for some of the subsidies. Now, a lot of those subsidies went to, of course, health insurance companies so that you didn't have to quite pay as much. Okay, that's better for you, but ultimately a form of corporate welfare, right? So at the end of the day, that's not great. You've got these companies that are, getting richer. And basically the whole point of that is we're going to bribe these companies so that we can at least keep the costs out of pocket down, even though a lot of that money still comes from your taxes. That's going to go to these insurance companies. So it's a bit of a ripoff. And not only that, but it's double dipping. So there's all that, right? And so now Biden and a lot of the corporate Democrats, they're saying, well, let's not do Medicare for all. Let's not do single payer. Let's instead do a safer option. Let's go with a public option. Well, now, wait a minute. Again, a public option should have happened about 10 years ago, and it doesn't actually fix the problems inside of the ACA. In fact, what this does is that, and why we're so worried about a public option, is that we have a corrupt system, right? We have corrupt politicians take money from, healthcare industry, health insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, etc., right? And so you're going to leave the public option, what it covers, up to the mercy of those corrupt politicians who will continue to gut the public option to make sure that as much money as possible is funneled towards these for-profit insurance companies. Well, that sounds like a stupid system, but that's what they're offering. That's what Biden is saying. Oh, that's why we need a public option. That's Harris's proposal, because it's not necessarily actually Medicare for all. It's not Medicare for all if it's not a single-payer system, right? And so that's the truth about the public option. That's the problem, right? It's not a Republican talking point. So now, attacking the ACA is not helping Trump, especially when you attack it from the left, right? Not doing anything about the healthcare crisis in America, that does help Trump. So he's wrong about that. But Joe Scarborough, he's going to continue. He says, just judging from what I've seen and what I've heard since that debate, a lot of the Democrats are pretty pissed off, saying that if you're thinking you're getting my vote by trashing Barack Obama's legacy, you have another thing coming. And he also, of course, calls it bizarre. Right. Now, he says, man, I spoke to a lot of Democrats. They were not happy about this. Okay, what Democrats did Joe Scarborough speak to, right? I would think that, again, because he is very wealthy and connected, I bet the Democrats he spoke to are political consultants or people at MSNBC. Now, these are hosts that make millions of dollars a year. Or you have bankers, or you have wealthy political consultants, as I mentioned, New York Democrats who hang out in his social circles. Again, Joe Scarborough is one of these now reformed Republicans because he was so, quote unquote, disgusted with Donald Trump that he switched and became an independent, right? But make no mistake, he's still incredibly conservative. And look, he's in that New York media bubble where everybody loves the status quo. Private insurance is absolutely amazing. I've never had any problem with it because you have all the money in the world. And how dare you attack our beloved Obama? I mean, just look at Trump. Trump is literally the lowest of the low bar. And so, yeah, of course Obama was a billion times better. That doesn't mean Obama was fantastic. I like Barack Obama. I voted for him twice. I supported some of the things that he did, a lot of the things that he did. But I also think that there's a lot of areas where Barack Obama fell short. And that's unfortunate. I didn't think he did enough on healthcare. I know the ACA, oh my God, what are you talking about? The ACA is amazing and wonderful. No, it's deeply flawed because it's based on a flawed idea. That you can have a health insurance plan that covers everyone in the country based on private insurance. I know there was a lot of, I want to say a swear word, but I can't. But there was a lot of resistance among Republicans, obviously, and the courts. Originally the ACA was supposed to cover people on expand Medicaid to everybody. Courts made it so that they couldn't. And so, there was a lot of judicial effery going around here. And yes, it blocked a lot of what the ACA was supposed to do to cover up some of those weaknesses. But again, this is a Heritage Foundation plan. It had these weaknesses to begin with. And what you had is a Republican Party so intent on destroying the legacy of the first black president that you had them who, knew all the weaknesses that this law had, actively attempt to dismantle it the best they can for political purposes. And of course, since they were able to win elections on that, midterms, and then get Trump into office, they didn't know where to go from there. And so they ended up putting up an even worse plan that failed. And so here we have the ACA, here we have the Trump administration still trying to weaken it, and here's Joe Scarborough saying, oh, how dare you criticize the ACA? You're doing the Republicans' work for them. No, the ACA has serious problems, and the American people deserve something much, much better. Now, I also think Obama was a little bit too friendly with the banks, big corporations, etc., and a little too deferential to the right wing, despite the fact that they despised him because he was black. So, look, there's good and bad with Obama, of course, bad being the drone strikes and many of the other things that I talk about. But Donald Trump, as I mentioned, is an absolute disaster. But you are allowed to criticize Democrats. But in Joe Scarborough's world, you're not. You're not supposed to criticize Democrats, especially from the left. And that is a double standard that I cannot abide by. So they'll fearmonger you, too, if you do that, into thinking that you're actually helping Donald Trump, when in reality, primaries are actually really good for the party. If you're a strong candidate, primaries, in theory, are supposed to make you stronger. If you're a weak candidate, then primaries are supposed to weed you out. That's the whole point of a primary. That's the way that it's supposed to be. However, Democrats, the DNC, etc., the DCCC, they have structured primaries so that the weakest candidates end up surviving because they're so, quote unquote, electable. Now tell me how that went last time when we supported the quote unquote more electable candidate than Senator Bernie Sanders. Now one more quote here from Joe. He said, quote, You're going up against Donald Trump and you're talking about defending Obamacare as Republican talking points. Who is advising you? Well, no one he knows. Look, over 56% of Americans want a single-payer healthcare system. That is one of Senator Bernie Sanders. That is one of the major planks of his campaign. And he is the only one that it continuously pushes for just that and says no middle ground. There are other candidates that have signed on to Medicare for all, but are too open to private plans or half measures. Bernie Sanders says no half measures, and he has at least half of the country with him. They want a single-payer system. So should we not listen to the majority of Americans who want guaranteed health care? Morning Joe says, nope, not on my watch, man. Let's listen to the donors, the corporate executives, and the loser pundits that go on his show, who said the establishment is great and that Joe Biden, why is Joe Biden not get 100% of Democratic support? Why are these two, Warren and Sanders, continuously among the top two? I mean, look, there's a reason. It's because they're tired of people like Biden, and they're really more tired of half measures. This is why MSNBC is damn near unwatchable. I mean, they have Morning Joe on for 3 hours. Why? Because the establishment loves him. They all tune in and they watch him. And also because he comes out against every progressive idea and has every single establishment hack on to agree with him. This is what MSNBC is. If you think they are progressive, if you think they actually present the progressive point of view, you are absolutely incorrect. You are wrong. And you don't know what a progressive really is. You probably think, oh, no, Joe Biden is a real progressive. No, he's not. And every time he opens his mouth during the debate, you see why. Okay. Moving on here. So ironically, I'm going to go and sort of defend Kamala Harris now. I know, it's weird. All right. Now, during the second round of Democratic debates, which included people like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Michael Bennet, Tulsi Gabbard, and Andrew Yang, and a few others, Tomi Lahren, who's a Fox Nation host, decided she would live tweet. Now, during her live tweets, and that's fine, of course, if you want to live tweet criticism, against some of these candidates and some of their policies, that's fine. Unless, of course, you go low like Tommy. Now, one of her tweets was so bad that even Fox News hosts came out against her. So let me read this tweet. She said, Kamala, and this was at Kamala Harris, did you fight for ideals or did you sleep your way to the top with Willie Brown? Again, this is somebody who claims to be a news host making this ugly, disgusting accusation. Now, look, I'm no fan of Kamala Harris, right? I think her record as a prosecutor is not great, as was pointed out by Tulsi Gabbard. Her Medicare for All plan is not really great policy either. It has a 10-year phase-in period, so it can be easily wrecked by Republicans. A Republican president could undo all of that. It's really kind of a show plan, right? Her student loan plan, as I've talked about, very, very limited. You have to open up a business in a disadvantaged area if you've gotten a Pell Grant and have it operate for at least 3 years, and maybe you'll have some tiny bit of your loan forgiven, right? So these are policy differences that I have with Kamala Harris. I think those policies are terrible. They're junk. They're not really helpful to the American people, right? That's my disagreement with Kamala Harris. Tomi Lahren's disagreement with Kamala Harris is based on an ugly stereotype, right? And it's absolutely super, super gross to accuse a woman of only achieving, and this is a fellow woman, right, of achieving her position due to sexual favors. I mean, it's absolutely gross and disgusting. Now, after this happened, you had Fox News contributor Kat Timpf, right, who retweeted Lahren and questioned why she would bring up her sex life for no reason. Quote, I'm curious to know what you think bringing a woman's personal life into this accomplishes. Men do that enough to us enough as it is. I'm honestly asking. I mean, she's dumbfounded. She just couldn't figure it out. Like, why would you do something like that? That's terrible. And it's because, of course, Tomi Lahren has no legitimate criticism of any of the things that Kamala Harris does. Nothing legitimate. Now, I can come up with legitimate criticism. I did earlier in the segment. But she can't. Because all she thinks about is projection, right? That's what she does. And lobbing some of the worst sexist attacks against a woman because she's a Democrat. Now, let me get to more criticism here. This is Fox Nation host Britt McHenry. Again, these are all conservatives, right? That are saying, holy crap, I can't believe you would say something like that. Now, Britt McHenry recently accused another Fox News co-host of sexual harassment. She said this, quote, do you have any idea how damaging this is to women who've actually been sexually harassed, assaulted, or demeaned in the workplace? How much this weakens our own gender regardless of partisanship? My goodness. Well, again, Tomi Lahren, this is what she's paid to do. She's paid to attack people in some of the worst ways, the most vicious ways. Now, after the condemnations, Tomi originally did not respond, but instead doubled down. Here's her tweet. Quote, ask Willie Brown how Kamala became AG of California. Disgusting. I mean, first, asking the question to begin with, and then doubling down. How bad is Tomi Lahren of a person? And by the way, Tomi Lahren is also a fraud. Now, I don't know if you know that she went through some of her old tweets, before she deleted them. I've been through some of those old tweets before she deleted them. I've seen her do videos of where she admits climate change is real. And where, some of those tweets, like I said, she was talking about how she couldn't wait to pop that pee. And yet here she is criticizing another woman and accusing her of sleeping her way to the top. Again, beyond the pale. Beyond the pale. So now after this negative backlash, and by the way, she got ratioed to oblivion, she finally kind of did a non-apology. So let me read that. Quote, and this happened Thursday morning. I apologize for my comment on Kamala's personal relationship. It was the wrong choice of words. There are many other things to take her to task for, and I will stick to those. Oh, it's the wrong choice of words, Tomi. No, dude, there is no way you can construct that sentence with the right words. If you want to criticize somebody, as I do, right, because I criticize everybody, well, then you should stick to criticizing policy. There is plenty of things, especially for somebody who claims to be a conservative like Tomi Lahren. Okay, well, take her to task on her policy positions. Say ridiculous things like, oh, but your free college plan is too socialist. I don't know. You can come up with something. You're allegedly a smart person, right? And I say allegedly. But no, the viciousness is the point. That's who Tomi Lahren is, or at least who she pretends to be. Vicious. I'm not going to say attack dog, right? But she's a person who viciously attacks other people in order to get clicks. That's the whole point. She was willing to sell her soul to, first the Blaze, One America News, whatever, to launch these attacks on other people because that's what a lot of her conservative followers, that's what they love. They love these sexist attacks. And what gets, riles up conservatives more and makes them go, yes, is when they get a female to attack another female. Or they get a black person to attack another black person. They get a Hispanic person to attack another Hispanic person. You see what they do, right? And Tom Lee has embraced that role. And in return, she's got fame, she's got power, and a lot of money. That's what happens when you sell your soul. And you become a terrible person, all for the money. Okay. Let's do one more here. Trump supporter is furious at the president because his wife was just deported. So now this is Jason Rochester and his wife Cecilia. Now during the 2016 election, he was in favor of Donald Trump. She, for a lot of reasons, was not. Now she said, he basically made the argument to her that, don't worry, he's only going to go after the bad ones, the bad hombres. So you're going to be safe, you're going to be okay, because you do your local ICE checks, and everything's going to be fine. Well, it turns out, nope. He told Raw Story that he voted for Donald Trump because he couldn't bring himself to vote for Hillary Clinton. And so he thought, don't worry, Trump wouldn't lie to me, so my family is going to be absolutely safe because she's not a criminal. She's never even received a traffic ticket whatsoever. However, a year after Donald Trump was elected, he, his wife, and their son went to the ICE offices for a regular check-in. This was back in November of 2017. And what happened is, of course, ICE ended up arresting her. I'm sorry, no, they didn't. Hold on. They had watched someone get arrested by ICE, and so she was absolutely afraid. So what she did is instead she self-deported. She, quote, volunteered to go back to Mexico and apply for legal entry. So they figured that she would be able to come back to the United States legally. This is what Trump supporters always tell people. Oh, if you're here illegally, just self-deport and get in line. Get in line. You should be able to come back the legal way and no problem, right? So they thought, okay, look, we'll wait for like a year, maybe 2 years, and then she'll be able to come back in. She'll be a legal citizen, a resident, and we can be on our happy way. What they didn't know is that she would not be able to reapply for about a decade. And then it wasn't even certain that she would be able to get granted entry into the country legally. Now she is currently in Mexico and is not able to visit her kids or see her husband or anything like that. So now Rochester, he says, look, I don't regret voting for Trump in 2016. And this blows my mind, right? Because, wait a minute, your wife just got deported. Your family has been broken up. And you're still like, you know what? I still don't regret voting for Trump in 2016. But this time I won't vote for him in 2020. Oh, so you kind of learned your lesson sort of halfway, but you have no regrets. That's insanity. Now, Rochester has an interesting sort of history, right? So he voted for Obama in 2008, sat out in 2012 after his wife was not eligible to get papers following the former president's first term. And so that's interesting. So he's one of those former Obama-Trump voters that we're talking about, right? And again, he fell for the lie that, don't worry, we're not going to go after you. We're only going to go after the hardened criminals. We're only going to go after the bad hombres, etc., MS-13 members. But no, that's not what's happening at all. What's happening is that innocent people, people who have not been accused of any crime other than crossing the border illegally or overstaying their visa, and they're getting rounded up and they're getting deported. So now conservatives look at that and they're just like, yes, it's exactly what I want. I want these people to get kicked out. Even, apparently even if it happens to their own family members. I mean, it's completely insane. Insane. But this is what's going on. I mean, this isn't the only isolated incident of this happening. According to American Families United, over 1 million U.S. citizen spouses are inadmissible for re-entry into the United States. These are families that are getting broken apart by Trump's immigration policies and Republican immigration policies. This has real effects, real impacts. You want to call yourselves pro-family by breaking up families. That doesn't make any sense. But again, I think Republicans at this point, Trump supporters at the very least, they're only pro-family when it comes to white families. Again, there's a significant amount of Republicans that still oppose interracial marriage. And people who are a lot older. And so they look at the situation and they say, perfect, just fine. We didn't want her here anyway. And it's amazing to me how this guy can still support his decision to vote for Donald Trump in 2016. But at least at this point, he's not for Donald Trump, but says he's disappointed with both parties on the issue of immigration and might sit out 2020. How do you reach people like this and convince them to actually get involved in the political process the right way? I don't know. And it's a sad story all around. But there are just people that apparently are just, I don't know, you just can't get to. Okay. Kind of a downer, but it is what it is. All right, guys. I didn't mean to go away just yet, but that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I do have a super chat in here somewhere to read. So let me go back to that. And I apologize for not getting to that earlier, to those earlier. So let me read that now. Jedi Mullet 77 says great. Says Tuesday's debate was great. Cloud Bouchard, who doesn't carry a single drop of beer, just used up her last drop of foam. Klobuchar. Isn't she at like 1%, 2%? Look, this Democratic debate field really needs to narrow, and it needs to narrow fast, because I can't take another pair of debates with there are 20 people, and half of them I don't remember their name. So we need to start with Delaney. Get out Delaney, get out Hickenlooper, and Tim Ryan, all those people polling at less than 1%. You got to go. Make room so we can get some actual decent debates instead of crap. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Please subscribe, and see you guys tomorrow.